In a perfect world, everyone would be out there fighting nuclear tanks. But not everyone has the free time, and that's where we come in. Hey, it's Game Rant, and here's every Metal Gear game ranked by how long they take to beat. Number 18, Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes. If rumors are to be believed, Konami was in a push-and-pull fight with series creator Hideo Kojima about his expensive productions, including the brand new Fox engine. In an effort to recoup costs, a preview for the upcoming Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain was devised. Known as Ground Zeroes, this entry has largely become a footnote, with most versions sold now incorporating this brief base invasion as an introduction to the Phantom Pain, as it essentially explains the plot. But altogether, you'll be maxing out the story at around 2 hours, although the additional challenge modes can greatly expand that to up to 20 hours. Number 17, Metal Gear. Way back in 1987 on the MSX2, a plucky up-and-comer named Hideo Kojima dreamed up a video game where combat would be avoided. Instead, players would sneak around to infiltrate a base to take down a nuclear tank. The story concluded at 4 hours, and extended looks capped around 5 hours. But the influence of this step forward towards game design has lasted for decades. Number 16, Snake's Revenge. Ugh. Over in the West, Konami released a butchered Metal Gear on the NES, and then decided to follow that up with an even more offensive action game labeling itself a sequel. Snake's Revenge is already a suspect title, as Snake is not known for his vengeance, but his quest lands around 5 hours with 6 hours for completionists. Feeling far more like Contra than Metal Gear, Hideo Kojima was so blindsided by this insulting sequel, he returned to the Metal Gear series to make an official sequel himself. Number 15, Metal Gear Solid on Game Boy Color. If you ignored this game because of its platform, you've made a terrible mistake. Arguably the best 2D Metal Gear game ever, this adventure game known as Ghost Babel in Japan is an original take on the established Metal Gear universe, and can be treated as a standalone game. 5 hours for the main story and 8 hours for a completionist run, and man, what a run. This game has all the stealth action in a small package. Don't sleep on this one. Number 14, Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake. Hideo Kojima was so annoyed at Snake's Revenge, he made one of the greatest games of all time. No, really. Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake is essentially the game he would later remake with Metal Gear Solid. Its 6-hour playtime and 7 hours for completionists took players through a chaotic world of shifting political alliances and the isolation of a soldier on the battlefield. So, thank you, Snake's Revenge. Nah, that still doesn't sound right. Number 13, Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. We're talking an all-thriller, no-filler, hack-and-slash action game from the makers of Vanquish and Bayonetta, combined with the absolute insanity that is Hideo Kojima's Playground. Except, he didn't really work on this one. It already had a failed version cancelled, and he was busy with the Phantom Pain. So instead, Platinum Games took the lead. 7 hours for the main story and 37 hours for completionists is what you'll get. But that really depends on how much time you want to spend slashing up soldiers as a cyborg. Lots, we assume. Number 12, Metal Gear Solid: The Twin Snakes. The absolute worst way to play the original Metal Gear Solid came to the Nintendo GameCube in The Twin Snakes. A remake from Silicon Knights, yes, the Eternal Darkness people, this game felt like a needless addition with Metal Gear Solid 2 mechanics shoehorned in. Made even worse with some dramatic cutscenes. And here's the real surprise, Kojima had minimal involvement. 10 hours from the main story and 18 hours to see everything else, though given the high price going for a copy, we recommend playing the original instead. Number 11, Metal Gear Solid. At the time, Metal Gear Solid was considered a short game, clocking in only at around 11 hours for the main story and 16 hours to see everything else, and yet critics and fans couldn't stop playing it for its advanced storytelling, which fully embraced all the audio, video, and even memory card and haptic capabilities of the original PlayStation. It's a classic everyone should experience at least once. Number 10, Metal Gear Solid Portable Ops. And on the other side is a game that no one should experience, Portable Ops. It was released on the PSP, taking advantage of Sony's 3D tech to bring the Snake Eater style controls to the brand new handheld. And it is impressive, for a bit, but it's also painfully slow, requiring Snake to slowly drag his enemies back to a truck to capture them. 11 hours for the story, which is no longer canon by the way, and 29 hours to be bored out of your mind. Avoid. Number 9, Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty. Metal Gear Solid was so significant to the landscape of console games that its sequel was automatically presumed to do the same even before it was released. 13 hours later and 26 hours for those completionists, and most players walked away confused by the convoluted plot, which felt like window dressing to a bunch of rich weirdos fighting for power. And you guessed it, that was intentional. Oh, Kojima, you devil. Number 8, Metal Gear Acid 2. The Metal Gear Acid spin-off series is sorely missed, and it's mostly because of this bonkers sequel, which combined some of the most garish colors imaginable to create a pop cel-shaded style that immediately leapt off the PSP's tiny screen. And we haven't even mentioned, this is a stealth action card battler, where you summon the power of cutscenes cutscenes from other Metal Gear games. It's 14 hours long and 42 hours for completionists. If you can get your hands on it, you're due for a memorable time. Now, if only we could find those 3D glasses. Number 7. Metal Gear Solid VR Missions. There's a point in Metal Gear Solid 2 where it's implied that the surprise protagonist Raiden was also the protagonist of this VR spin-off, which allowed players to test out all the cool skills they learned during the original Metal Gear Solid. 16 hours for the main gameplay and 27 hours for completionists, but of course, this is all about your skill. Go for the gold, and there's plenty of worthy unlockables, like the Cyborg Ninja mode. Poor Raiden. Number 6. Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater. Again, we're ranking these games on length, not their quality. But it seems that each and every Metal Gear Solid game, at least in the main entry, is essential to anyone's library. Snake Eater took players back to the Cold War in the 1960s, as a young Snake attempted to prevent a nuclear war. 16 hours for the main story and 24 hours for completionists. You try not to cry at the end. We dare you. Number 5. Metal Gear Solid 4 Guns of the Patriots. When fans complained that Kojima was taking far too long to tell his stories and cutscenes, he heard them and decided to double down. The main story can be completed in 18 hours with 35 hours for completionists, but regardless, a full 7 hours of that is devoted to cutscenes, including one which continues for 90 uninterrupted minutes. Only Kojima. Number 4. Peace Walker. Portable ops became completely redundant the day Peace Walker was released. Clocking in at 18 hours for the main story, the real answer lies somewhere in the 92 hours for completionists, as players became addicted to capturing and using flotation devices to nab highly skilled soldiers. This game is so much faster than dragging people to a truck. Peace Walker is the game that defined the late era of the PSP. Number 3. Metal Gear Acid. Yep, we're back with Metal Gear Acid, and well, it's not nearly as interesting. No offense to the first game, as on its own, it's rather impressive. Transforming the gameplay into something strategic like a card game took plenty of inventiveness, and we appreciate the 20-hour story and 50 hours of content. It's just, Metal Gear Acid 2 is simply more fun. We still want part 3 though. Number 2. Metal Gear Survive. After Kojima left Konami, the first Metal Gear game in his absence turned the familiar series into a shambling zombie. Quite literally. A little on the nose there, don't you think? Some enjoy the base building and slower survival-based mechanics, but at 23 hours for a nonsense story and 60 hours for completionists, we really couldn't recommend this game to anyone. Number 1. Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain. Yes, the story was left unfinished, but there's something poetic about Kojima's final Metal Gear game focusing so much on the gameplay and the way mechanics interact with the greater world. The Phantom Pain is among the richest games of the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One generation. With 46 hours for the main story, there's more than enough reason to stick around for the full 161. One of the best open world games of all time, heck, one of the best games of all time period, proving that you can have quality and quantity. Well, that's gonna do it for this list. What Metal Gear game do you think has the best pacing? Let us know in the thread below. Keep clicking on here in Game Rant, and we'll see you next time.